Oh, some of my favorite music there. That was Ganser Band, the last track we heard. Who I keep trying to find ways to describe them. I guess uh, it just makes me. What are they? Post punk. It sounds like 1979. Um, it's just edgy, and I can feel the guitarist making jerky motions and angular guitar. There we go. And then before that was Day, who appeared with Pigface in 2019. Um, a little bit of Sonic Youth, yes, Daryl. And nice to see you, mate. Um, yeah. So, and then Day with, what's that Day track called? Electric Get Down. I'm Martin Atkins, music industry coordinator at Millikan University. This is our weekly MmX, put together by students in the music industry program at Millikan, and as kind of stepping stones to our November 14th all-day event, which will be our third all-day conference. And today, we're going to talk about health and wellness, mental health, anxiety, stress, depression, all of that stuff. And I want to introduce Ace Piva, who's joining us from Toronto. Ace, you are, what is you're with, you founded Over the Bridge?
I did, yeah. And thanks for having me on here, Martin. It's a pleasure. So
Well, I can ramble about stress and anxiety, but I'm like, there are some things I think it's advisable to have an expert join us. So if we can ramble a bit.
yeah.
You have some slides as well. Oh, great.
Well, you had asked me the other night to put together a little bit of a presentation, so I got 22 slides for you, my friend.
Right. So, but let's ramble a bit first.
Of course.
Because what just happened to me was I was dancing to Ganser Band. I was making some coffee, listening to Day, da ba da ba da 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 da, and it lifted me up.
Right.
So here we are in the music business, being lifted up and having this energy come into us and lift us up. But aren't we all fragile, empathetic people who fall apart really quick? What I'm saying is, what the F are any of us doing in this fucking business?
You know what? The more I've been doing research on this industry and how it affects people, and I talk with people, I talk to a dozen to 20 people a week, for hours at a time about the subject. And it's such a crazy industry, just because like at one point music makes us feel great. There's no denying that. Yeah. There's a ton of research that has proven that when you listen to music, your brain ignites. When you play music, every part of the brain just starts lighting up. But then on the opposite side, there's actually the business part of it. I know I got into, I started off playing as a drummer at the age of 9, and
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my first sparkly red Stewart kit for Christmas, and that was the beginning of it. And then I went to, my neighbor had a band called R Rocks, ROXX, like a hair metal type band. And I went to their band practice, and they did a version of Radar Love. And I was just like, I'm in. Whatever that did for my brain, it lit it up. And I knew this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Right. But as you get into the industry, like I would like to think everyone gets into it, not so much the money, but because the music makes you feel good. And when you're around the people and the live music, it makes your brain go nuts. But then on the flip side, the lifestyle that the music culture, not so much the industry, but the culture has created is it demands these late nights, and early mornings. You know, your your eating schedules usually go off. Not many people have eating schedules unless you're a bodybuilder and all that stuff. Although it is a healthy practice to participate in, but then once you throw in show times in and sound checks and all that, you're trying to grab anything to put in your mouth hole just so your stomach stops rumbling. You're not worried about calories. You're not worried about how much energy that muffin is bringing to you, or McDonald's chips and whatnot. You're just worried about, as long as my stomach is full, I'm good. You don't worry about the more important stuff. That's a second and third thought into it.
Right.
So it pulls us in to two very drastically different ways. The unhealthy lifestyle, you're not getting enough sleep, the food you're eating is shit. I've had people say that their stage time is their exercise time and loading in is exercise. Not really. Like, don't get me wrong, if you could do a couple reps with your kick drum or your bass head, we all know that Ampeg bass head is 75 pounds. If you can rep that, you're doing pretty good. But people won't take the time to do things like that, because once you get into the higher stuff, the professional world where you're doing afternoon and morning load-ins, you're on the job to unless you got an understanding crew, and assuming you're in a position to have a crew, maybe you'll be able to say, hey, TM, could I make sure I have between 11 and 12 because that's my workout, whether you're a crew member or a band member, right? Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you can't. It kind of depends on the culture of that tour.
Right. My rule for the road is, with regards to food, the better the quality of the food at the venue, if the venue's providing, the least likely you are to be able to eat it. So because I'm a very physical drummer,
right?
If that food is an hour and a half late, which can happen for all kinds of reasons, everything gets pushed back, none of the guitars are in tune, blah blah blah. So the tour manager pushes the food back to a point where I'm not having a slab of lasagna within an hour of me playing drums. It's going to be all over my drums. So, and the same exact rule follows with a hotel breakfast. The better quality a hotel breakfast, luxurious spread of healthy fruit and nuts and granola and cereal and all this stuff, the less likely it's like, the buffet starts at 7, the bus leaves at 6:30. It's like, of course. It's tough, but you touched on something there, like, so music makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely felt, I stopped playing my drums for a while, and I definitely felt this thing happen to me when I started to play again. I was physically exhausted after a 4-hour rehearsal, but my brain I was just like, what is happening? I was so calm and relaxed because I just spent 4 hours. I guess my brain was telling all of my separate limbs to do different things and wasn't wrapped up in nervous bullshit or did this package go out or what's happening with this. And so making music can really chill us out. Mm-hmm. But as you said, you bring the business side in. Playing my drums in front of 4 people in a 1,000 capacity venue is humiliating, stressful, not fun, etc. So it's such a roller coaster ride.
To be a musician, you got to be very brave because, like you mentioned, you're never going to know the size of crowd that you're playing. Well, you'll know by ticket sales and all that, but the numbers can be so dynamic. I've been on tours where I'm opening up for Kiss, for 30,000 people, and then the next day we're headlining at some small bar and there's 3 people and a bouncer, then 4. You know what I mean? And so it's like the emotional ride. You got to be emotionally strong. right? And to be able to handle those ups and downs, and because you got to put on that same show for no matter, or the expectations are that you're going to perform in front of 4 people as you would in front of 40,000.
I would say that if there's 30,000 people in the crowd, you're taking their energy and you feel their a little bit from everybody. When there's 5 people in the crowd, they're trying to extract 30,000 people's worth of energy. You've got to not only deliver the show you play to 30,000 people, you have to find levels of theater to be like, yeah, this is fantastic, when it obviously isn't. The emotional drain and toll of that is just, it's tough.
Well, you got to put on that facade, right? It's tough to lie to ourselves and to others. So when we are in those situations with only 5 people, we got to lie to ourselves. We got to lie to everybody because we're putting up that facade, that lie. And it's not to say that it's necessarily bad, because you're playing music, you're having a good time on one, the musician part of you is having fun because you're playing. But Martin, I know someone like you is very business minded. You've managed artists, you've your own bands, you label, very accomplished. Is that that business side? It's hard not to pay attention to that when you're up there and you're looking. You're like, oh, well, the promoter's taking a shit on this one, right? Or if it's some sort of door deal, well, I just drove 100 miles to play in front of. Well, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, we'll talk about me for a minute, and then I know you've got a presentation, so I'm happy talking about me for another minute.
Yeah.
But so it was actually sitting on stage with a band I was in called Killing Joke, and we're playing to. We had some amazing shows, and I think we were in Houston, and my drum monitors were crap, and I could put a knee out. I play loud. If I can't hear drums through my monitors, I'm just going to keep playing louder and louder. So that's dangerous for me. Plus, it wasn't fun.
Right.
House system, people could just talk over the music. So it wasn't powerful. And I started to look around, and it was because the promoter thought he could charge more money. So he did. He put the ticket price up, thinking 500 people would pay $25 and he'd make more money. Mm-hmm. And instead, 250 people paid the 25. A bunch of people said that's too much money. So he started to save money on the rider, health and wellness, the nutrition stuff, the monitors, and the sound system. And that's when I started to teach this stuff, to try and plan ahead, never take your country to war unless you're sure of the outcome, mm-hmm. to stimulate advanced ticket sales, to work with promoters, and to try and avoid these situations moving forwards. So it was my anxiety on stage, in a way, having my high get spoiled by a promoter with no business, a greedy promoter, that started to have me try and do things to make my onstage experience more beneficial for myself and the audience. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one of the things I do when I am on stage, because I do run my business, I have a mirror ball here in between my cymbals. Yeah. And if my mind is like, well, 1750 is too much on the door and blah, blah, blah. If my mind is full of equations when I sit behind my kit, I'll just punch my mirror ball. And I'll end up with pieces of glass, like some bizarre jewelry with pieces of glass in my knuckles. Right. But now I'm just thinking of like, oh my goodness, I'm bleeding, I'm in pain, and it just focuses me in on the moment.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things about being a musician is being able to focus in on the moment, because when you're able to do that for yourself, I think we could often bring the audience in with us, but we got to get there first. So it's not necessarily the audience's responsibility to bring that energy, whether it's 5 or 50,000 or whatever. It's not their job. It's your job to show them the energy, and then they amplify it back. Because I've had some amazing shows, both playing and as a sound guy, where there's been not a lot of people, 30, 50 people or whatever, but that band made everybody feel like there was 50,000 because they had gone inside and brought that energy out. So it's a big responsibility an artist has.
But there's a cost to that. I mean, I felt that. There's a cost to that when you're not getting the high from the audience, where you have to make up for the 100 extra people that aren't there. It's so exhausting to do that.
Right. So, and when you're looking out at those few people, what's the payoff? The payoff isn't a big crowd response. It's not massive merch sales. It's not more money. You put yourself out there more for less at that point, because you do need to amplify for what's not there.
Right. And there is I feel there's like a comic component to this, where more often than not, if I have a speaking gig and I'm expecting twice as many people sometimes somebody in the audience is like, hi, here's my card. You should have actually been at this other place that I book. It's actually how I met Bob Boylan from NPR. He was at my events in Denver. It wasn't a very large crowd, but I delivered, and he gave me his card and we started a friendship. So you never know who's going to be there.
Right.
Yeah. So,
do you remember what that show was like?
I remember thinking, I dug deep to ignore the fact that there's maybe 100 people in this room. It was the beginning of a new conference in Denver. And so I wanted to not draw attention to that, just be professional and deliver the best talk I could for the people who were there,
Right.
So, yeah.
So, but because you're able to give it your best, the gentleman from NPR seen what Martin can do, and it led to something bigger and better. And that's usually how it works, not just in the speaking world, but music industry. You never know who's going to be there in the crowd.
Right.
So
enough rambling bullshit from me.
Right.
This is a really important topic right now, especially. I think lots of people ran into the pandemic like, wow, we got this. And now, what are we, 6 months into this now? And it's kind of like, oh, shit. I definitely sense an oh, shit moment. Are things bad up in Canada?
Yeah. We were getting good, but in the last week or so, the numbers have been going up, and people are trying not to roll things back. My area is in stage 3 right now, as far as being open. So like people can eat on patios and stuff, but people have to have masks as soon as they leave their little tables and things like that. But we're sort of on the fence because we hear some rumors that they're going to be shutting things down again. And then, of course, people are trying to avoid it as well, right? So, yeah, right. So, yeah,
it's got to be tough to kind of be gripping hold of this thing that's electrocuting you. Go, okay, I can survive this for another 5 minutes, and you survive for another 5 minutes, and somebody says, hey, another 10 minutes, another week, another, it's tough.
Wow.
It's tough.
Daryl just mentioned in the side chat here that numbers in Toronto are hitting the highest daily cases since COVID started. We were at 70 per day. Now we're at over 700. Thanks, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl. And just the last thing I'll throw in here, I feel as though a lot of us are in the dark with this, or maybe our governments are in the dark, or maybe they aren't. But we can look to other countries like New Zealand. Amanda Palmer is going to New Zealand, or she lives in New Zealand. She's doing tour dates this month because she can, because they had 1 case last week, I think, in the whole country. So, yeah.
Well, I think if we take this COVID conversation ahead, I think it'll definitely turn into a pretty political one at that. So, you know, and it's obviously not a political issue, but some
So
people turn it into.
let me hand. Are you going to share your screen? Am I handing?
Yeah. Let's see here.
And, and
Share.
and once again, thank you for taking the time to do this, Ace. As I say, I think this is a really important issue and not something I want to bumble my way through. So,
Right. Well, thank you. Well, you know, from here, I just wanted to bring out some of the more basic things that about mental health. You know, I want to clarify some definitions. I want to talk about stigma there. You know, so you know, we're going to be talking about definitions of mental health, illness, and wellness. What are anxieties and depression? Examples of anxiety and depression. Causes of. What is addiction? What is a stimulant? Stigma. Examples of stigma. I think the examples are really important because we use terms like stigma and depression and all the time, but a lot of people use words like mental health, illness, and wellness sort of interchangeably. Okay. And those words should not be used interchangeably. You know, then we got some facts of musicians' mental health. We're going to put a spotlight on some of the studies that have come out in the past couple years. There's not many, but over the bridge we're working on one, so we'll get that to later. Then I got a couple quiz questions, and then I got a couple questions for everybody to participate in if we have time.
Great.
So I'm just going to quickly go over this because I think this is something, it would be like an hour and a half, 2-hour topic, but we got about half hour, 35 minutes and around there. So I'm going to close this up for a sec. All right. Definition of mental health, illness, and wellness. There is a difference. I'm not going to read everything verbatim, but I'll just give you point forms. And if you guys want, we could get this to Martin and we can get them all out to everybody. So, you know, mental health, you know, that's sorry. I am going to read a little bit. So mental health includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also determines how we handle stress related to others, and make choices. So it all sort of, our mental health is our ground base, you know, is our point zero. And mental illness, well, you know, mental illness are health conditions involved in emotion, thinking, or behaviors, or combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress, distress or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. So, you know, we're not feeling so well. Mental illness is something that we live with. It's not something that defines us. We could all struggle. Mental illness is something that sort of it feels like it's unexplainable, you know, that has a negative impact on the choices that we make that affect our lives. Where mental wellness is the opposite, is where we're in a good state of mind, where we are able to cope with everyday stresses more manageably. And that's the first foremost. So if you're going to be talking about mental, please don't mix up these three. There's a big difference in all of this. You know, you might want to ask a question, you know, how is your mental health today? And that way they could tell you where they are at, as far as feeling well, or maybe they're feeling ill, and it's okay either way. What is depression? Well, depression is a mood disorder that causes a person feeling a persistent feeling of sadness or loss of interest, also called major depression disorder or clinical depression. It affects how we think, feel, and behave, and leads to various emotion and physical problems. If I stutter, I'm dyslexic, so sometimes I stumble a little bit. Some of the symptoms, you know, feeling sad, depressed, loss of interest, and things that you normally feel happy about. Maybe it's playing your instrument. change of appetite, trouble sleeping, loss of energy, loss of purpose. And that seems to be an a loss of purpose. That is a big one I've been coming across, especially with COVID. Music in the music industry is often our identity. And right now, since we're not doing it, people don't know where they belong. Sometimes we're feeling worthless or guilty. We have a hard time making decisions, and sometimes thoughts of suicide and death. What are causes of depression? Physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. That is a big one. Sometimes medications, conflict, death or loss, genetics, major events. COVID, anybody? Yes. Serious illnesses, negative word use, negative self-talk. That is such a huge thing. We are always listening to ourselves. And if you say things like, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, you listen. And sometimes people will call you out on it and you go, oh, I'm joking. Nah, I think there's more to it than that. So positive self-talk, everybody, please. I can't stress the importance of that. Everyone looks over that so much.
Can I jump in on that for a second?
Please do.
Somebody was telling me, think about your passwords for things and change your passwords to be like, instead of XYF15PP, whatever, change your passwords to like, you're awesome. You can do it, and like however many times a day you're doing this simple thing and your brain is like, yeah, okay. I don't know.
I am going to take that idea. I'm working with a small group of people right now where they're not in the best place. They have a lot. They're not very confident in themselves. So we started off this week, and I have them sending me videos of them doing positive self-talk. It's okay to say I love myself. My name is Ace, and I like to think I'm awesome, and I work hard every day, as opposed to negative talk. And I ain't even going to entertain what that is, because enough of it happens. So what is anxiety? A feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. For us, it's, what we got a show coming up, we got an event coming, we have a webinar coming up. You're not confident in what you're going to say, and no matter how much time you put into it, sometimes you're always going to have a little bit of doubt. So, fears of situation in which you may be judged. This is a prime time, prime example. Being on stage is a prime example. Showing demos and, being confident in your music writing. Those are all, situations where we put ourselves out there to be judged. And that affects us. So once again, that's part of the stresses of the music industry. For a lot of artists, music is a therapeutic process that helps us get those thoughts and feelings out. And initially, sometimes those are private thoughts, and now we amplify those out to the world. It takes a lot of balls to do that, to put yourself on a pedestal for people to have any sort of judgment on you, positive or negative. And sometimes when it comes to musicians, or often I see people will get a good compliment. Hey, that was a good show. And often our musician's response is, well, it wasn't that good. My voice was a little pitchy. My kick pedal kept screwing up. My monitor sucked, blah, blah. Hey, just shut up and say thank you.
But if we're anxious, sorry, here I am jumping in again.
Yeah.
If I'm anxious, there's the audience's opinion. Why on earth do we put ourselves in situations where it's like, oh, hold on a second, here's a review in the New York Times that says I'm shit or awesome, equally ridiculous. Why do we do this?
Well, Martin, I'm glad you asked, but I'm not going to answer that yet, because that's coming up later on in the slides. Okay, because you're right. Why do we do that? So what is addiction? And this is kind of goes into what you're just saying. You know, the inability to stop a behavior or substance, no matter how harmful the behavior results become. In recent years, research has shown that addiction is often a coping strategy to relieve the pain of trauma or PTSD. You know, and then, you know, what is a stimulant? A substance or physical activity that encourages the production of dopamine. I can't even pronounce that word. Serotonin and serotonin in the brain. So, what does playing music do? Right. So, but before we get back into that, what is stigma? Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular criticism, quality, or person. Stigma is an act or speech that takes away from one's character or reputation. You know, stigma issues, mental illness, addiction, appearance, color of skin, sexuality, gender, or religion. Those are all things that are stigmatized. Just because someone isn't thinking the same way you are, sometimes people hate on you, and that friggin' sucks. Here are some more examples. You know, here's a phrase. Have you ever gone and heard someone goes, "Oh, that person's lost their marbles," or "They're not playing with a full deck," or "That person is crazy"? Although I understand what you're trying to say, that is also a very stigmatizing comment. You know, a common but wrong assumptions about people with mental illness. People may assume someone with depression or another mental illness is unstable, lazy, untrustworthy, unintelligent, or incapable, right? And sometimes someone is going through things, and let's say they picked up a project and they've had a bout with mental illness, and it's not us to deem what they're capable of. Maybe if we notice a friend is suffering, maybe we ask them, is this something that you're able to continue doing? Let the decision be up to them, because you picked them in the first place for a reason, because they're good at the job. So, you know, let that, if someone's struggling, sometimes we do have to move ahead, but let that be that person's choice. If they can still get it to you on the deadline by what you need, what's the problem? So, isolation of people with mental health. When talking to someone with depression or another mental health problem, you may unconsciously step back to increase your physical distance from someone or turn away from them. You may also speak to the person with mental illness in an angry or condescending tone, or as if he or she was a child. And I understand that. I've seen it. It's wild. I don't know why people do it, but it happens. You know, it's the stigma. Maybe someone who's acting like this has had been in a situation where that's happened, or maybe that's how they've seen other people react, so they thought that was the better way. I'm not too sure, but don't do that. You know, and also, you know, telling someone with mental illness to get over it or snap out of it, you know, that is stigma. Don't say that. Ask them what they need. Give them a hug. All right, so now onto some facts of musician mental health. Can Music Make You Sick was the name of a study that came out in 2016 involving 2,211 participants by Help Musician UK. 71% of respondents believe that they have experienced anxiety and panic attacks. 68.5% of respondents experience incidents of depression. All right. I wonder why that is. You know, yeah, we were talking earlier about the highs of the performance, the lows of the business. You know, I'd be interested to see how many of these people were independent musicians. So, another study out of Australia in 2016 with 2,900 participants said attempts for Australian entertainment workers are more than double of the general public. The levels of moderate to severe anxiety are 10 times higher than the general public. So this isn't just for musicians. This is also for the workers behind the scene. Australian entertainment industry workers experience suicidal ideations 5 to 7 times more than the general population, and 2 to 3 times more over the time of a lifetime. Road crew members experience suicidal ideation almost 9 times more than the general public. That's a high ass number. And then rates of suicidal ideation, planning, and attempts are extraordinarily high and indicate a need for early intervention programs tailored to the industry. Whoa. Quiz time, everybody. Does listening or create music flood the brain with dopamine and serotonin levels? Martin, what do you think? Through your experience.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How can it not? It gets you jacked. Music releases a chemical in the brain that has a critical role in setting good moods. A study suggests. In the study, dopamine levels were found to be up 9% higher when volunteers were listening to music they enjoyed. So that's listening, never mind playing. That number would be way higher. All right, we are going to play a quick game, Martin, with you called This or That. Is it music or a stimulant drug? Stress reliever, boost energy levels. You can feel the effects on your body and brain. Triggers both positive and negative emotions. Combats loneliness at a chemical level. What do you think, Martin?
Is it music, Ace?
Sorry, buddy. Quick trick question. It's both.
Oh.
So, group question here. Maybe we could give people a moment to answer below. But what are some things that musicians are willing to do to create music? Martin, you're already talking. When we were chatting earlier, you're already mentioning, putting yourselves in these situations because you're trying to save budget. So you're willing to eat unhealthy. What are some of the most craziest things you've ever done?
This isn't like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. But I was presenting, I'm starting to tell a story about the tour we did in 2019, where we went from Texas up through Oklahoma, and we had to decide if we were going to make a left and go to Denver and try and do the Denver show in a snowstorm, the highest snow they've had in 25 years. Or we were going to forget Denver and make a right and go to the Kansas City show 2 days later. And for some reason, we made a left. We went to Denver. It was one of the best shows of the tour. But when I was telling the story of it, the fact that we might not have gotten there, or we could have been trapped in Denver and had to cancel the last 3 dates. I mean, in retrospect, just going on tour in the first place seems completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm prepared to do almost anything to.
How about in the early days? Like what? Someone in the chat here says, sacrifice friendship, go hungry, spend money on things for music, but not basic needs.
Right, all of that. But so now we have this problem, maybe, of like, here are the 5 things you need to do for your overall health and well-being. And anything, I would assume being a trapeze artist, requires that you make these sacrifices to get to that point. Right? So that feels like this strange juxtaposition to me,
Hey, Daryl, if you're still there, what are some of the craziest things you've done to put on your festival? I've been there with you, buddy. There's been some wild stuff. So, like for me, I've slept in the back of trailers because the rain was in the States. It was a van and trailer tour. the rain had gotten so bad we had to stop under an underpass because the next exit was like 20 miles, and the downpour was crazy. So we tried to get some sleep. I went into the trailer, which I couldn't lock fully from the inside, and every time a transport truck went by, I thought I was going to get smashed.
Wow.
Right. My first couple bands, we slept in the van, slept in people's front yards. I've given up my apartment for tour because it was either I go on tour and not afford rent, or I stay home and don't go on tour. Well, I picked tour, which means I come home and I live in my van and people's couches.
Carol said you broke your foot as well.
Yeah, smashed my big toe. We were loading out a sub speaker, and the things landed right on it. It was about 2:30 in the morning in the rain. We were loading out for Indie Week, and we're just there saying, okay, everyone was running on fumes because we're all working since 9 o'clock in the morning, and it slipped and it crushed my foot.
And Daryl said, and that was the day lightning hit the bank. I couldn't get floats for the door. The venue's loading elevator broke. The space was on the 6th floor. The gear pickup was in another city. And in the van got into an accident on the way for us to pick it up. But what I would say to that is not like, oh my goodness. I'd be like, yeah, sounds like a Tuesday. I'm like,
yeah.
But that's, although being in bands and being in this industry can be dangerous to us all in every possible meaning of that word, is it also beneficial to people, do you think, Ace?
I find that to be sort of a trick question, because on the one aspect, you're surrounded by music and that makes you feel great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But in the music, I feel we're all addicted to it, or else we wouldn't be doing all that. Right. But then on the other side, and that's very healthy. But on the other side, we have the industry aspects, and when people are working on festivals and events that are very low budget, like, for some of these instances that Daryl was mentioning here, is that, would have been helpful to have a second crew? Yes. What's the budget? Is it available? Do you have enough? Are you able to afford the right people to have two people on doing one job? Maybe an afternoon shift and then a late night shift. No, it's you get a day rate and you work until the job's done.
Right. And that Tanya said she slept in a tent in the middle of Douglas Park in Chicago for 10 days for Riot Fest amongst cat-sized rats.
Wow, I believe that. And for 4 years, in fact. And part of it comes with like the pride of like, hey, look, I'm like, I made it through this war. It feels like a war. I was talking to a doctor who worked with the U.S. Army and who had got involved in the music industry, was that he goes, the only difference between war and tour is that you get shot at less.
Well, in war you get shot at less.
No, in the music industry you get shot at less.
I don't know about that. Okay.
But
yeah.
I'm not, and I'm like, oh, and he explained it to me. It's like, it's a very similar lifestyle. You're gypsy. You don't got a place to call your own. You don't have personal space. You're always on a schedule. And it's just like, it's a bonkers lifestyle. I remember one time I was doing my first bus tour, and we had stopped in some small gas station, and I'd just woken up and I didn't know where I was. So I went to the McDonald's that was right out there, and I asked the girl, I'm like, hey, what city are we in? She stopped, asked me if I was okay, because she was worried that it maybe like bumped my head and was in a concussion. because I'm like, oh no, I just got off the bus. I've been sleeping for the last 3 hours. No idea where I am. But just take that outside perspective. That's how do you not know where you are?
Right.
Right. And it's little things like that have sort of, little instances over the years that have popped into my head and I've recognized. So the next slide, does that sound like an addictive behavior?
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like risky behavior.
I know people who have stole, like broken into houses to get money for a guitar amp because they need that amp for their next gig. Musicians, unfortunately, there's been instances where bandmates have stolen off of each other. It's the same behavior as someone in what we would assume is like, someone who uses heroin or coke or crack or some of those like really harder drugs. We do the same sort of activities. So what's the difference? It's the only difference is that music is an acceptable activity, similar to going to the gym. But you could, the gym could be addictive. What are you using music to not face decisions that we have to make in other parts of our life? Because we all know when we go on tour, we can avoid home life like the plague. Sorry, honey. Oh, that happened. Bad news. Sorry. Can we talk about it later? I'm about to do sound check. And you just never address those issues. So we have 10 ways to so now that we've talked about all this, Tanya most definitely. So Tanya also mentions that most definitely, I think she's referring to music being an addiction, doing it regardless of the consequences over and over again. And we know the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results.
Right.
And music drive, it fuels us. It's such a wild. Music is such a wild gift because it affects so many people in such a positive way. It sets moods. It gives us, as life goes on, you can think of a song and it'll bring back memories. And it's music's being proven to help people with Alzheimer's, but, and there's so many great things that music is able to bring, but the people behind it, the creators, the event makers, there's so much passion, involved that no matter what the distresses are, we are going to make that happen because our passion and our love for music is so strong. It's unbelievable. And there needs to be more of this conversation happening between as many people as possible, so we can sort of identify this. Like, how can we still live that healthy, balanced lifestyle if the industry itself is unbalanced? And going to the stigma thing. Like if you're a crew worker, like a house crew worker, doing load-ins out at an amphitheater or whatever, if you say, hey, I can't come in today, I'm having a mental health break, it's more damaging than saying, hey, I'm sick, I'm pukey or whatever. And guess what? Depending on who your crew chief is, maybe you won't get that call.
Right. Something I think about that TV show Deadliest Catch. They're out there getting crabs in the middle of whatever crazy ocean, and things that would happen in an office. Oh, I've cut my finger. Oh my goodness, let's make sure your finger's okay. everybody stop. Maybe, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
When you're in Deadliest Catch or on the road, it's like, okay, we've got some duct tape. You know, you duct tape everything back together and carry on. And that seems not healthy. But at the end of that, there is the payoff, if you like, of a show that happened in the face of adversity. So I'm just wondering where the I don't know what I'm saying, Ace.
Yeah, but you're right. Like there's so many levels and diversity in music, and it gets complicated after a while. We're only human, and I think some of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves to figure it all out by ourselves because we think that our situation is so unique that maybe not everyone is going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a very large industry, and for the students and people who are listening, it's important to look towards each other and keep this conversation going, not only for someone else's mental health, but for yours. Yeah. As much as we want to be supportive, we need to learn how to lean on others as well. The music industry definitely has what I call the mother syndrome, where we want to take care of everybody else and put ourselves last. But at the end of the day, by the time mom's 60, 65 or younger, her body is all beat up. Maybe there's walkers, maybe there's other, physical aids help people move around, wheelchairs and whatnot, just because they've been putting everybody else for so long that they never took the time to take care of themselves. So we're just going to go down a quick 10 lists of to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression here. Talk about your feelings. We're just talking about that, the importance of that, and normalizing that conversation to yourself and your peers is so important. That way we feel understood. Keeping active. Regular exercise boosts your self-esteem, your concentration, sleep, and you feel better. And if you're on the road, pick up a couple empty cases, lift them up. They're there. Eat well. We were talking about that earlier, the importance of eating. If you drink sensibly. We often drink alcohol to change our mood. Some people drink to deal with fears or loneliness, but those effects are only temporary. And at the end of the day, we have to face those again. So, and if it's a time-sensitive thing, usually that situation gets a little bit trickier. Keep in touch, connection. This right here, what we're all doing, it's a sense of connection. We've come together because we're all interested into a topic, but it's make sure when you're away, use all these same technologies to stay in touch with your family and friends. When you're on the road, we start living like a big balance difference. Like there's no balance. It's just sort of music. Where's your life? It's fallen over. Ask for help. So asking for help is a very difficult thing to do. And none of us are superhuman. But if we don't talk about mental health in the first place, asking for help would be even harder, because that way, if we're in a crisis moment, you'll think no one understands me. But if we've been able to get that conversation going while we're well, we'll know that we'll have certain people in our corners. So we shouldn't wait until a crisis moment to start talking about it. Take a break. Sometimes you just need a Sunday in bed, watch a movie, and chill. That is good. I take every Sunday off at 7:00, 6:37 every night. I turn my work brain off, because I start around 7 to 8 in the morning, And by that time, my brain is like mush. If I try and take a business call later on in the day, I'm no good. I won't remember what it is. So take a break. Do something you're good at. Hey, if you're good at playing solitaire, crocheting, knitting, doing art, do something you're good at, because that builds your self-confidence. You enjoy drawing, whatever you're good, cooking, go. If you're a good walker, go for a walk. If you're good at laying on the ground, lay on the ground. Just know that you're doing something that you enjoy. Bring the pleasure and it'll bring up our confidence. Accept who you are, positive self-talk. That is the most important thing. But you can't accept who you are if you have nothing nice to say about yourself. And we got to get in the habit of talking positive about ourselves, so other people start, falling into place. People think of you how you present yourself. So if you're always going like, oh, this is the hardest day in the world, I'm not good at this, this sucks. There could be, and it's good not to be good at things. That means you're uncomfortable. But as you go through those uncomfortable processes, you grow. And when you grow, you progress. And progress equals happiness. And then after you've cared for yourself, care for others. Because when nothing feels good, almost as good than caring for others. And that's why often we do that first before accepting ourselves, because it feels so good. And if we care for others, people's first, that means we're giving ourselves permission to put ourselves last. That means if you put yourselves last, everyone you talk to, because of that self-talk, will put you last as well. You'll become the second thought. You'll become the option, right? The secondary option. Why? Because you do it first. You set the tone on how you are viewed. So, and then my last one,
okay.
Thank you very much. Create a good balance, because that's what life is about. Balance brings you happiness.
I like your shirt.
Thank you.
Where can people find that shirt?
Actually, this was one a local organization has given to me, but we're in the process of redoing the imagery,
okay,
to make it, and we're going to be printing in collaboration with that organization. We're going to be getting them out there.
Well, please let us know when they're ready, because I'd love to get one of those.
Love it.
Just as you went through those 10 suggestions,
yes,
it occurred to me, like I should add on something like this into the Tour Smart classes, so that if you're the newest crew guy on a larger tour, it's tough, but the role of a tour manager could it's a complicated job,
right?
But you want a tour manager who not only makes sure the electricity is the right voltage and the customs forms are done and you get paid at the end of the night, but there's another level where a good tour manager will be looking out for everybody, saying to the guitar tech, take a break, it's been a rough 4 days, or saying to the club owner, my crew is depleted, get me some bananas. The role of a tour manager in this is kind of huge. We should add on some kind of over the bridge tour manager seal of approval certificate, because half of the problems on the road happen when everybody's misfiring on all of the points that you've talked about. Internal band dispute with the promoter, dispute with the audience, all of those things.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up, because that's something similar to what we're working on. We're going to start off with a stigma training and so forth. But when you are a new person on the crew, often, because I've been that person, I've been the new person on the crew, but the tour manager. right? And so people don't know who I am, and everyone's a little bit skeptical of who you are. But I think as a leader, it's important to uh, open up the conversation of mental health. And it could be in an email, it could be preferably, or email followed by an in person. Uh, and I've heard a lot of stories of people, merch managers and guitar techs going to their TM and just simply saying, "Hey, I'm having a rough day. Can you just like ease off?" And not asking for less responsibility or anything like that, but just like, "Can you talk to me nice today? I'm having a rough day." And then from some of the old guards, who are a little bit more jaded, who learned on the road by getting yelled at. They're only putting out how they learned. You know, are they being assholes? Yeah, but and I've heard these people saying, if you can't take it, then maybe you shouldn't be here. And that one comment has, set that person back, and they didn't want to perform the best for that TM and for that artist. But in addition, I've also heard that people on crew have stigmatized and try and get that person off the tour just because they simply said, "I'm having a rough day. I do live with depression or anxiety." And, and often it's just choice of words, instead of being like, "Yeah, sure. No problem. What can I do to make your day better?" If you have if you're in a position where you have like runners and stuff like that, hey, maybe a certain coffee or a certain ice cream would make that person feel better. And you're not doing anything that out of your way to do it, except writing down on a piece of paper saying, "Get this." But it blows my mind on how some people can be put out that stigma because that attitude, thinking that their shit don't stink or whatever. Like, I don't even know where comments like that comes from.
Well, I think I think I've been doing this since I was 9, like you, and I've definitely been the this is a journey for everybody. I've definitely been the, "Oh, you're not feeling good? I broke my finger. My hands are, I can't," right? Um, but I've also been the person trying to look ahead. Joshua, who's on the call right now, I think I called Joshua. He brought a friend to the Cleveland show. Like, can you help set up the merchandise, because we're like one show in and losing it. So there's always people who will help. It's just finding the time to reach out to people.
So I got caught up reading Mason's comment here. Mentioned that he goes, "I think a lot of my issues with stress have to do with my difficulty of saying no to people. What advice do you have for people like me who don't like to turn people down?" You know what, Mason? That is such a huge question. And the answer is not easy, because I myself am a people pleaser, and I want to say yes to everything. But you have to, depending on the ask, you have to put that in what importance is that in your day. Like, are we out of guitar strings and we need them right away? Or do you still have a pack of guitar strings, or a box of guitar strings, and the guitar tech, let's say, doesn't need it for a couple more days, but he's trying to be proactive, right? And it's as simple as say, "You know what, I feel, is this something that we could order tomorrow?" Or maybe you can say, "Hey, if you send me a link from a tour supply to make my job easier, that'd be great." maybe depending on the ask, really. But like you, I'm a people pleaser, and I hate saying no, especially to someone on my road family. Uh, but depending on what the ask is, and maybe you can give us an example of an ask. Uh, you just got to put it in, prioritize it in the things that you already have to do, really. Like, are we asking for a Snickers bar for no reason? Sorry, that's going. Can that wait? Because I'm about to let the doors open right now, and I got to make sure all our security's in place. Or do you drop security meeting to go get a friggin' Snickers bar? So prioritize.
I think that's harder at the beginning of someone's journey as well, because you don't want to say no to something that could be the coolest thing you've been involved with, or the thing that you think is going to be crap turns out to be like, wow, I actually really like doing this. I didn't realize this was, so it's tough. It's tough.
I'm going to say, I'm going to share one story about my first tour as a TM. I was working with an artist from the UK. I just finished I did a 10-week tour management course in Hamilton, where I'm from. And funny enough, I found out years later, the whole course was based off of Martin's book. and so that was great. But I had known that artist had a substance related issue, and he's missed shows in the past. So we did South by Southwest, and then we went down to the Viper Room, and there's other bands on the bill and guests of the show that were known for their substance use. And he had asked me for some tour money. I was warned ahead of time that this artist has gone on binges before. And I also knew that this artist just took out a couple $100 out of the bank the other day, and he wasn't walking around with a new guitar, right? So now he's asking me for money at like 1 o'clock in the morning behind the Viper Room. And I wanted to say yes, because he is essentially my boss, but the money I had was not for him. It was for the tour. And I had to say no to him, although he didn't like it because it was messing up his party plans. And it got to the point where I put the money in my pocket, and we went out in the back, and I said, if you want this money bad enough, you're going to have to take it from me. Right. I was a local bouncer at some clubs around here, and he was a skinny dude from the UK. And he's like, well, I can't take it from you. Then I'm like, obviously you don't want it bad enough, so that way, not only was I challenging someone's party plans and money that rightfully is theirs, right? Because he was the leader of the band and everything else. But I was also having to say a really big no to someone who is very passionate about getting that money. He swore up and down that it wasn't to buy substances. But I didn't know that. I could only guess and read the room, right? But and he could have easily have fired me. My first tour in, I could have been fired because I said no. But at the next day, his whole band made him apologize to me, because the band thought the ask was ridiculous, but to the level that it went to. But it was my first tour, my first time having to say no to a guy I met 4 days ago. And in the last 4 or 5 days, we had gone to South by Southwest. We had done some of the coolest shit I've ever done in life up to that point. I was living a rock star moment, at South by Southwest. So you get all invited to all these special parties and all that stuff. And this guy just introduced me to a whole new world that I'd never been a part of before. And now I'm telling the guy no. So I was expecting to get fired. But often when you say no, it's for a good reason. And I do believe that as long as you have everybody's best intentions, you'll get the respect afterwards.
Well, there's a response from Mason. He said he's he's doing classes, he has an internship, he's also writing for the newspaper, and it's hard to spin all those plates.
Mm. So, sorry, I don't see that. Uh,
It's in the chat.
yeah. The last one I see was Tanya Ray asking about what a TM I put in a mental health first kit.
Oh, that's a great question too. Oh,
Yeah.
I was reading off of the chat, Ace, but
Oh,
what
okay.
do you want to answer, Tanya? That's a great question.
So that is a great question. And it's not so, yeah, for a mental health first aid kit, there are classes, online classes and in person that that you could take mental health first aid. So, you know, it's a few $100. It's usually the course of 2 days, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And that definitely helps you manage other people's, because it's not so much a first aid kit as mental health first aid skills.
Okay.
That you need to learn, because you have to learn how to take things in from different perspectives. You know, if someone is having a manic attack, or they, you know, you need to, if you're in a room and someone's having an episode, you need to learn how to clear the room of people, not clear the person from the room.
Right.
Clear the room. You know, so if it's your backstage area, you know, you ask everyone to sit tight, and the people who don't belong there, get them out. So mental health first aid is a good one. Another one is just sort of doing your daily research. There's a whole bunch of YouTube videos up there where you can pick up little tricks and tips along the way. You know, from mental health, you know, learning anything you can, you know, mental health and trauma, because, you know, and addiction and trauma. There's a guy named Gabor Mate out of Vancouver. He's massive on believing that addiction is caused by trauma. So, you know, get to know your theories, get out there. It's a never-ending learning aspect to it, but just get your ear to the ground. You know, just like you would picking up an album. Eventually, you pick up, you know, who's doing what in the mental health space. So, yeah. But mental health first aid, definitely something great to look into.
I like the idea of the mental health first aid kit. And also, I mean, I would say as the stakes get higher with people's careers, with people's health, just understanding this stuff would give you, I mean, just to talk blatantly about jobs, gives you an edge in the job market. You could say, well, I've tour managed these shows, and I have these certifications, and I can bring this awareness. And I would also say that something you could do as a tour manager is do your job really well as a tour manager. If there's lactose intolerance, if there's whatever requirements the artists have and crew within reason, fulfill those requirements, so you're not dealing with an issue on top of an issue on top of an issue.
Right. And, you know, I was in a discussion not too long ago, and it was with a bunch of people from the music industry. And the question was asked, and maybe I'd like your feedback on this, Martin, is should a tour manager ask if anybody lives with any mental illnesses? Or is that private information?
Actually, we just did this. It is private information. We set up, actually, Molly, we had 18 people coming on the road with pig face, and we set up a Google form that one of the questions was, look, are there any medications that you have that we should be aware of, so that if you lose those, you know, are your prescriptions with a national provider? So it's easy. And do you have a copy of your prescription? Just prompting some things to alleviate possible problems down the road. but always saying, if you don't want to share this information, then of course don't share this information with us.
Right.
And
Right.
and the Google form means that somebody can type in their responses and nobody else has access to the Google form. They just
Right.
fill out their own sheet.
Right. Yeah, because that is a tricky question. I understand that it is a personal issue, but we also claim that we are the tour crew is, the road family. And in any family, you would, or I'd hope that you'd be honest with the people within your family about what's going on. So if someone is having a bad day, and I'm going to advocate for that, and that's my position, because it does help break the stigma. The more we're open about it, the more that we help break the stigma. And because I also know, roadies who've been on the road, and as soon as they were seen taking any sort of mental health medication, people in the band didn't feel comfortable with that person and they got kicked off the road. And they were taking their medication so nothing would happen. It was a preventative measure, right? Everything was doctors, a prescription, everything was legal, everything was, the way it should be. But just because the stigma, then they started getting on to that crew guys back, making the stigma comments and saying things like that. And all the guy wanted to do was his job, right? And there was no other issues except for until people found out he was on medication, right? So at this point, I think many of us are going to be trailblazing that conversation, and it's one thing to have it on a webinar, but when you're in the real life situation and you're talking with people will become comfortable once the conversation is brought up, and you'll notice those who are, being hateful and stigmatized. How about we don't want those people on the road with us?
Right. Yeah.
Let's flip the tables. If you're not going to be accepting of how someone was, with something that someone was born with, or maybe, it's someone's in recovery and now they're dealing with the mental health side of it, because the brain goes through a whole process when it's on the recovery. It takes a number of years. Sometimes it affects your speech, sometimes your brain functions. There's a number of ways, but if we open up about it, and for those who don't have any questions, or sorry, for those who do have questions, it opens up those doors for people to learn. So, because you may be in the position where you're the teacher, because you're the one with lived experience. So learn your stuff and be open to teaching people. So, and if someone is an asshole and wants to be stigmatized, it's like, hey, it sounds like there's something you don't understand. Is there something you want to learn about? Call them out. You don't have to be an asshole in a way you call them out, but just offer them a learning experience, because usually it's just not understanding.
Right. And there's so many, every tour is its own independent business. You would hope that there can be accommodations for everybody within that. There's a question here from Josh Heinzman in the Q&A. What recommendations would you have for someone who has a known mental illness and is starting into the business?
My advice for someone with a known mental illness would be to keep advocating for yourself. Take the time you need to learn the skills, like how to tour manage, how to make sure people are doing well. But like we had mentioned earlier, you got to put yourself first, because if you're not healthy and if you're not at a 100%, then you can't give more than what you have to the people around you. Mm-hmm. So if you're running only on like 20% fumes, energy level, brain level, then you'll never be able to run the tour properly. You'll never be able to play your guitar parts or whatever it is, whatever your job on that tour is. you'll never be able to do anything to a full capacity because you're putting yourself last. So, put yourself first. If you need extra time, like, I'm when it comes to mental health advocacy, I'm in an interesting position because I don't live with mental illness. I do have my low times, right? But what got me on this is my mom does. She was on medication for 20, 30 years. As soon as she hit menopause, those medications didn't work anymore, and we had to find new ways. Eventually, she went there for electric shock treatment, and I was there out of the 12 sessions. I was there for 8 of them. And there's nothing scarier than watching your mom flop around while she's getting electrocuted. I'll tell you that much. And so from that point on, and for a long time, my mom didn't have the ability to advocate for herself because she was too tired. She was in bed. She'd get up for an hour, then she'd sleep the rest of the day. We'd make plans, they would get canceled. And then the worst day of my life was probably when she had called me when she was in a depression and asked me for permission if she could take her own life. Right. And my answer was, Mom, I love you, but I also don't live your life. You can't put me in a position where I'm responsible for your actions. But at the same time, I don't know the pain that you're living through. So if you're going to make that decision, you need to make it on your own. But while you do, you please remember that you got a son and daughter and a husband that love you, and we've been through it all. And I'd appreciate it if it wasn't for nothing. But at the end of the day, I don't live your life. And as soon as I put that responsibility back onto her, we've had conversations over the years regarding that moment. She thanked me for doing that because she knew it wasn't fair for her to ask that of anybody. And just by putting that responsibility back in her court made her, continue on.
Wow.
So,
wow.
And that was my big mental health advocacy role, or how I got into that, and how I became into addiction recovery. Was I was out with an artist who was in recovery, and then he wasn't. The tour went to shit. Couldn't get him to do any of the interviews that he was supposed to do. And then one day we got a big, massive fight because he wouldn't do that interview that he had begged us to get beforehand. And then after a 4-hour fight, because he wouldn't do a 15-minute interview with Canada's largest radio station, I left the bus, and then I bumped into a fan, and right out of that door was a fan who had lived 10 years in addiction, and he had gone to all the rehabs and detox and everything, and nothing had clicked with him because he was so immersed into the hip hop culture, including the language, that when he went to get professional help, he wasn't able to connect with it, with like the words they were saying. It blew my mind that someone was so into the Ebonics language and lived in Red Deer, Alberta, when you should be, as Canadian as you can be, chopping down trees. But for whatever reason, the hip hop, he connected with the hip hop community. So what he had explained to me, that after his years of addictions and his multiple tries to get help, that it was the album that this artist had put out about his recovery journey that spoke to him, because it was put into a language, phrasing that he understood. And right there is like, I realized the power of music. I've always loved music. It's obviously in my blood and my passion and everything else, but I've never had to rely on music for life guidance like that. And it really touched me and taught me how music does empower people and can empower people. And if we could, these conversations are really important, because my goal is to influence the influencers. Everyone in this room, you have the opportunity to influence the artists that you work with. And when you influence those artists positively with a positive message of self-care, finding balance, and then hopefully they will continue that conversation, bring it to their fans. So I want to help the people who have the biggest megaphone. So we can help people all over the world, just like this artist did with with that fan. And as and yeah, we want to influence the influencers, and you people are the influencers. And it's, people like Martin and other tour managers who and industry people who are putting on these webinars and are teaching the next generation. We also need to teach that generation that we need to give a shit about ourselves before we give a shit about our jobs and anybody else. Because if we don't, then we're not as helpful as we have the ability to be.
Wow. Well, thank you. Oh my goodness. I think as we come to the end of this, I have to say, I think we're just beginning this journey, this subject, and it feels really great to start this journey through the music community, because people on stage have microphones, megaphones, if you like. There's a merch booth. The merch booth doesn't have to just sell shirts and buttons. It can pass out materials and influence from that angle as well. And we can wear shirts that say "fuck stigma." So I want to thank you, Ace. This has been really, really great. And if I can ask you to maybe do this again in 2 months' time.
I'll do it every day. Just ask me, I'll be there.
Okay. So. Well, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody. There's been some great comments in the chat and some great questions too. As I say, I think this is just the beginning of this journey.
Right.
I'm thinking I'm going to do the certification. I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
And did you say you'll make your slides available to me?
Yeah, yeah. I'll send them over to you. I'll talk to Molly. Let me know if you want a PDF or PowerPoint or whatever, and I'll send them over.
And I think that the top 10 list, just really helpful stuff that I'm going to start to incorporate into my tour management class. But thank you so much, Ace. And I think Molly will send out some links. Oh, she's putting links in the chat. But also, Molly, if you'd send out links to all the attendees as well. I saw Fletcher had some links. Tonya Ray Cohen, thank you so much for your comments. And Joshua, thanks again, Ace. This has been really great and timely as fuck. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And, add Over the Bridge on all your social medias. If there's anything you want us to share, we will. We're starting up a community partnership program where we align with other resources. Basically, we want to be the bridge between, because there's a lot of great public resources out there, right? But because people in the music industry are so never in one place, we never even learn what's going on in our own town. So we want Over the Bridge to be that central place where, as we connect with organizations across North America, we want our industry to know what resources are available. Not just music industry resources, the ones that our government puts on, your government puts on, because they're out there, but we just don't know them. So I want to. So if anybody has a local resource that you're aware of in your area, please send it our way. We want to promote it because we want people in your area, to know what's available in their area. So
great. Thanks a lot, Ace.
Thank you very much, Martin. I appreciate this.
For helping with this, and thanks everyone.
All right.
Good deal.
Take care.